What is up? And welcome to the Bet Chicago Sports Podcast. I'm Shane Jackson. I'm excited to be here today previewing week 3 of the NFL. And I have with me today to do just that is Spencer Urquhart of BetNola.com. He's a sports betting writer for BetNola.com. Spencer, we just had Zach Ewing on a couple days ago to recap week 2. So it's only fitting that we have another BetNola person here to preview week 3. How's it going today, Spencer?
All going good, Shane. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, week 3 should be a lot of fun. Week 3 NFL, week 4 college. So it's a lot of football, but that's what we love. So let's get it on.
For sure. As a reminder, this podcast is presented by Caesar Sportsbook, the official odds partner of Bet Chicago Sports. If you've not signed up with Caesar Sportsbook yet, you can do just that. Simple and easy. If you're watching this live or you're watching the video version of this podcast, just scan the QR code right there in the lower right corner. Very simple stuff that will get you straight to their new user offer, which is up to $12.50 for your first bet. And if you lose, you can get that stake back. So really great stuff. Make sure you take advantage of that. Obviously, if you're listening to this in audio form later on, I have that same code in every one of my articles at shawlocal.com/bet. All the content is for free at shawlocal.com/bet. So make sure you go do that as well. Subscribe to us on all platforms, audio wise, podcast wise, all that. It really helps out the show. We're still new, we're still growing, and we're excited to preview week 3. So let's dive into it. We'll start with the game tonight because if people are watching this live, maybe they're itching to have a bet on tonight's game. Don't really know why you'd be itching to have a bet on this game. It's the Steelers and the Browns. The latest spread at Caesar Sportsbook is Browns -4.5. The total is 38 combined points, if that gives you any indication of how exciting this game will be on Thursday Night Football. Any quick thoughts on this matchup and how you're kind of betting it, Spencer?
Yeah, not too excited about this one. A lot of defense. I feel like will be in this one where it probably won't be a whole lot of points, but both quarterbacks kind of turnover prone. So I'd probably stay away from the total since it's set so low at 38. If I had to pick something, I'd probably go with the Steelers to cover 4.5. I think it could be a pretty close game as long as they don't turn the ball over. I think they could come within at least a field goal.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with Mike Tomlin as an underdog, especially against a division rival. His history in that situation speaks for itself. So, if you were leaning aside, it feels like the Steelers are the right play. I was looking at it when it was 5.5 earlier in the week and wrote it up in my spread picks column, which I write every single week, and was tempted by it. Didn't ultimately pull the trigger. A little bit regretting that. Ended up settling on the prop market, the player prop market, and throwing a few bucks on that. And so I have Chase Claypool under 39.5 receiving yards. He has yet to hit that mark through 2 weeks, although it doesn't mean a whole lot. I just think the situation he's in right now is not beneficial to his skill set. He's this big slot receiver, a big play waiting to happen. And his ADOT is extremely low right now. Mitch Trubisky does not push the ball down the field. And Chase is not a guy who creates a lot after the catch. So wouldn't be surprised if his final stat line ended up being, 4 or 5 catches for like 31 yards. And it clears the under by a long shot. So you can bet that at Caesar Sportsbook right now. And I wrote up a little bit about it at shawlocal.com/bet. Enough with the boring game. Let's talk about what we've learned so far through 2 weeks. What do you think is kind of the biggest thing you've learned through 2 weeks now of the NFL season, Spencer?
Oh, man, I'd probably say that it's just, there's a lot of unpredictability, obviously. And probably one thing that really stands out to me is that, that the AFC West, honestly, is not as immortal as we thought. Like, as far as they've had a lot of struggles, the Raiders 0-2, Denver's 1-1 by the skin of their teeth. The Chiefs and Chargers played each other. And I mean, the Chiefs didn't look that great against the Chargers, and the Chargers, I forgot who they beat in week 1, but they did the Raiders. Yeah. So they've played each other a lot, but out of the division, they've not looked very impressive. So that's been kind of surprising to me that the AFC West teams haven't been more explosive like we thought.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because it felt like, they were getting comparisons to maybe the greatest division ever going into the season. And it's still early in the season, right? That could still happen. But it is interesting to see how the market's already adjusted, especially to Denver. Nathaniel Hackett was 100-1 to win Coach of the Year earlier this week when I wrote an update on that award at shawlocal.com/bet. 100-1 when he was like 18-1 earlier in the year. I mean, that is crazy. Nobody was that long entering the year. So they're basically saying this guy has no shot after 2 weeks. It just feels like the market is maybe overreacted is the right way to describe about how they feel about the Broncos, because now the Broncos, who went from a 2.5-point favorite against the 49ers, are all of a sudden an underdog at home against the 49ers. So it's just interesting to see how the market's adjusted on that. So I did like that call because I really think it's Denver's focus, but also the Raiders as well. For me, I kind of alluded to it earlier in the week as well, but for me, it's the Bengals. They're 0-2. And really, it felt like that was the time to get your wins, right? They have a brutal stretch to end the year, but losing to the Dakless Cowboys and still having a chance to win a game where they had 5 turnovers against the Steelers in week 1, that feels the most concerning to me. I'm kicking myself a little bit because last year I faded them the entire AFC playoff run. I bet against them in every single AFC playoff game. Raiders had a chance to cover, didn't. Tennessee gave them the game away in the final minute. And then the Chiefs obviously couldn't score to close out the first half, and Cincinnati ended up coming back to win the Super Bowl, or not to make it to the Super Bowl. And I was ready. I was so ready to jump in and fade this team again starting the year. And then it felt like everyone was. They went from the favorite in the AFC North to not the favorite within months. And it just felt like I was like, well, now they're being underrated a little bit. They still have Joe Burrow. They still have these talented pass catchers. I have yet to bet them or against them through 2 weeks, but it felt like maybe if I had stuck to my original stance on this team, maybe I would have made some money through 2 weeks, because a lot of the concerns we had this time last year are still here, right? That offensive line is still underwhelming. That defense is below average, and Joe Burrow is just getting pressured a lot. So I think that is extremely concerning, and they have to fix it pretty soon because it gets hard in a hurry in that schedule-wise.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, they're my lock of the week this week, man. Against the Jets, I think they're gonna win that easily. If Burrow's have his back against the wall, 0-2. I mean, I wasn't expecting that. I thought though the Bengals might start off a little slow, being that there's a new offensive line. They've got to get that chemistry amongst the unit there. Which, I mean, if not, they're gonna be lucky to win 6 games. But I think they'll get it enough to where they'll win. I feel like at least 8 or 9, maybe still get a wild card. But man, 0-2, that hurts. But this week, expect them to bounce back in a big way.
For sure. Let's get into week 3. What game do you think you're most looking forward to this week?
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to this week. I mean, probably the most interesting has got to be the Packers and Bucks. It's a 2 NFC powers clashing, Rodgers and Brady. And the funny thing is, it's probably going to be more of a defensive game, as the lines indicate. The over/under total is very low. It's like in 41, I think, like one of the lowest totals. They normally think Rodgers, Brady. That's gotta be high scoring, but with the way they are now, Brady's without his weapons. Rodgers doesn't really have any weapons. It's going to be not many talented receivers out there, and a lot of running the ball, defense first. So, yeah, I don't expect a whole lot of scoring there, even though it's Rodgers and Brady. So, interested to see who comes out on top, because that could determine who gets potentially the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting game. It felt like that was kind of the slam dunk one, right? That's the one that we probably should care about the most because of what's at stake. To me, I think I'm interested in the Bills and Dolphins. And not because I necessarily think the Dolphins are positioned to rival the Bills in the AFC East and really become an AFC contender. But this is really a chance to prove that, right? Like, I do think they were a little bit fortunate in week 2. The Ravens had some busted coverages there in the fourth quarter. They dropped an interception. Marcus Williams did what would have been his 3rd interception. And then one play later, they throw a touchdown bomb to Tyreek Hill, and all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. And if they hold on to that interception, maybe the Ravens hold on and win that game. Obviously, you have to get some breaks to win any game. It feels like every single week in the NFL. But I just feel like this is a real test for them, right? Bills are ranked number 1 in defensive DVOA currently through 2 weeks. They were near the top as well last year. I know they're banged up secondary-wise, but it feels like, if the Dolphins can still put up points and still move the ball against this unit, then you have to start taking them very seriously. I mean, Mike McDaniel's doing a lot of really interesting things. They're incorporating a lot of pre-snap motion. and maximizing Tua. He's getting the ball out to his talented pass catchers, and they're making plays after the catch. This is what this offense is supposed to look like at its best. The question is, will it happen against the best? And I'm fascinated to see. I'm staying away from it from a side perspective. I did lock in the under on the total just because I do kind of bet against the idea that Tua will have that same success. But I'm really fascinated to see, because if it does, I'm very excited about what that matchup in particular could mean for the rest of the AFC picture.
For sure. Yeah, I'm thinking the Dolphins come back to earth this week, and that Tua, I'm actually one of my top prop plays for the week, Tua under on his yardage prop. I believe it was up to like 250, 260 yards. I don't see him doing all that great against the Bills. Like you said, number one defense there. And so I don't see him doing a whole lot this week. I know he's got elite weapons, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But it's one of those things, like a lot of times when you have like a huge historic career game like that, you come back to earth the next week. So maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I'm fading Tua and the Dolphins. I like the Bills. Bills are just there. Everyone's like, a lot of people love them, but they also have a lot of haters that are like, oh, the Bills, everyone's hyping them up, but they're hyping them up for a reason. That's a team that could win 14, 15 games.
For sure. Let's get into it then. I mean, if you had to bet one game this weekend, I mean, which game are you betting and why?
Well, the Bengals, yeah, that's my lock of the week. I know someone in the comments was saying that to be careful with that. Yeah, Logan, that was his lock of the week last week, and it didn't go well. But I think this week it's a much better circumstance, because the Cowboys last week, backs were against the wall. Everyone counted them out. This week, the Jets are coming off a win. They're riding high off a comeback. Joe Flacco, yeah, a lot just that ain't gonna cut it though. Joe Flacco, that's all you need to know. I mean, I know he had a good game last week, but he's a career backup for a reason, or at least, not career backup, but backup for like the past 3 years or so. So it's just one of those things where the circumstances to me are very much in Cincy's favor. Since their backs are against the wall and they're facing a Jets team that's simply not used to success. So I think they're going to come out flat.
And it's also important to remember that the Browns should have won that game and covered against the Jets last week. I mean, if Nick Chubb goes down, they win by 2 scores and it's over. As someone who was sitting there rooting for Jets +7, it was, that was a very fortunate cover in the end. So, I do think that is a pretty good call. I think it opened like 4.5, which was crazy. It's still a number that I think is worth attacking. I'm not betting it or against it. I'm not listening to my own advice from earlier in the show. I'm just not comfortable yet jumping on the game, but I don't mind your stance, because I think you're probably right. For me, if I had to bet one game, it's the game I have multiple bets on. It's Chiefs Colts. I said earlier in the week, I thought this was going to be your classic, pros versus Joes game. It was pretty clear to see that there's an argument for sharps and smarter bettors to be like, yeah, let's buy a low on the Colts. This line used to be 3.5. It got all the way up to 7. Like, this is a buy low opportunity on the Colts in their home opener against the Chiefs. And now it's down to 5.5. And so I jumped in on that from the Chiefs spread perspective, because it's the Chiefs again with 10 days of preparation against Gus Bradley's defense, who runs that cover 3 scheme, which is obviously the scheme that Patrick Mahomes wants to face. He did it. Gus Bradley did it with the Raiders last year, and Mahomes could pick whatever number he wanted, and he put it up. I think they had like 44-8, 44-9 wins over the Raiders last year. His stats have been really good against Gus Bradley's defense, obviously weighted by last year's results as well. And I just think, in this era or this last year or so, it's been, hey, let's run too high against Mahomes. Let's make him work for it. Gus Bradley and the Cardinals in week 1 are like the only ones who don't do that. So I think they can move the ball. They can decide how many points they want to put up. And I think this could be a little bit of a high-scoring game, back and forth between the Colts. But ultimately, I think the Chiefs win by a touchdown. So I'm comfortable playing the team total of the Chiefs, the combined total between the two teams, and the Chiefs -5.5. It's the only game I have multiple bets on, and all those numbers still exist. I feel pretty strongly. I know it could look really square come Sunday, but squares win too. And sharps lose too. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games where you look up and the Chiefs are up by 20 and you're like, why did I ever bet the Colts?
Yeah, that was one where I was a little leery, like, to even mess with it, but I'm more on the Colts side on this one, because of the fact that it looks like they'll be getting Shaquille Leonard back, their all-pro linebacker, and I feel like he's gonna improve their defense a lot because without him, the first 2 weeks they struggled bad. I mean, especially last week against Jacksonville or Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is I like Trevor Lawrence a lot, but he's struggled a lot to start his career, but he made it look easy in week 2. So I'm thinking, though, with Leonard back, they're gonna give Mahomes a little trouble to where I don't know if they'll be able to win straight up. I think there's a chance they could, being that there's another team backs are against the wall, who 1-1. So I feel like that's especially early in the season. That's a narrative I like to tend to play with. Play the teams that are you're really needing these wins. I know it's not a guarantee, but it's a lot of times that extra motivation will help. So I think the Colts will be able to cover. But it's just I can see why you like Mahomes. It's hard to bet against that, man.
Yeah, and nothing shocks me in the NFL, right? Like anything can happen. The last Sunday's results all turned on its head in the middle of the slate. Like nothing will shock me. The Colts could come
Yeah.
out and win this game outright, and it won't be surprising. But it's just one of those things that like it feels like it's almost too good to be true, and so I'm gonna test fate and see if it is. Are there any other picks that stand out to you on this slate that you're backing?
I kind of like the Jags to cover. I like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's the real deal. Where I think they'll be able to hang with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. Man, I mean, he got rocked last week. I mean, I know he had some extra days to recover. Being that they were on a Thursday night, but he got hit hard, and even after the first hard hit, he got hit again. Where if he takes some big hits, he could be in trouble because Jacksonville's got a pass rush. They've got Josh Allen and the number 1 draft pick, Walker, to where they're gonna have the heat on Herbert. I guarantee you, they're gonna be blitzing. They know his ribs are hurt, and that game could end up closer than people are thinking. I know that's a lot of people's lock of the week, but I don't think that is. I think the Jags can cover that.
Yeah, it's so hard to know exactly what the injury is and how much it's going to hold him back. But yeah, I don't mind it. I think the spread currently is just playing the middle. They're like, we don't know what to do with this Justin Herbert injury because if he's healthy and fully loaded, I mean, this spread should be 9.5, and if he's out, this spread should be 2. Like it's just it's they're kind of middleman's land here, no man's land, and so it's almost worth it just to take a stance there. So I don't mind that call at all. For me, I think I'm going to go back to the Commanders. I was on them last week. Did not work out. They did not record their first down until midway through the second quarter, down 22-0 against the Lions. The market ended up moving in my favor on the pick. I got them at the best price you could possibly imagine, but the result did not matter. I mean, they were never in that game, so it was a bad pick. That said, this is at home. They're getting 6.5. I got 7. The 6.5 is still pretty good because this line was like 3.5 in the summer. And looking at headline, it was like around 4. Like this is greatly inflated because of what we saw on Monday Night Football, where the Eagles probably played the best half they could have possibly imagined and jumped out to an early lead on the Vikings and really didn't shut the door by any means. Vikings had a chance in the second half. They just kept giving the ball away. So I don't know. I'm going to bet against Jalen Hurts looking that good on the road against a division rival. Carson Wentz cares about this game too, and I think he's done his Carson Wentz things through 2 weeks, but he's also played pretty well through 2 games. So I don't know. It feels like I've been backing the Commanders a lot early in the year, but I just feel like they're kind of underrated by the market. And in this case, I think it's more about the Eagles being overrated by the market. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those, hey, they struggle and the Eagles still, win by a field goal or so, somewhere around that line.
I'm with you on that, Shane. I could definitely see the Commanders covering because their offenses look pretty good. I know they struggled early on against Detroit, but they caught fire at the end. They've got some playmakers, man. Scary Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, John Dotson, and Carson Wentz has looked a little better than expected. So I could definitely see him covering. And it's the revenge narrative, Wentz against his old team, kind of an ugly exit. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder in this one.
Real quick, I wanted to close this thing out with something a little bit fun. I want you to predict the future a little bit. What do you think is Monday's morning's hot take from Sunday's results? If you had to predict, turn on first take. What are they talking about? What's the big segment on Monday?
All right, yeah, I'll keep the Trevor Lawrence theme going. It's Trevor Lawrence, an MVP candidate.
Yeah, I like that. And I was on the Jags to win that division. I thought that the price was too good in the offseason. The Colts were kind of a fraudulent favorite. Like they were obviously should have been the favorite, but they had issues. And I thought the Jags were a little bit underrated. So I like that. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks take that leap from year 1 to year 2 and be an MVP contender. So I don't hate that take. My take would be not as hot, I don't think. But I think on Monday morning, we're going to be getting those segments talking about, can the Bills run the table? Can they go 17-0 after they whoop up on the Dolphins like they seemingly always do? And what's really funny about it is they're going to play the Ravens the following week, and that might be their L. So, but yeah, I think Monday morning is going to be like, hey, can the Bills make history? Can they go undefeated? Like, is this team just the runaway favorite? Because people are already itching to do just that. I think Sunday will take the cake.
Oh yeah, well, you gotta love overreaction Mondays.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Spencer, for joining me and previewing week 3. Remind people where they can find your work.
For sure, man. Yeah, y'all can find me at bet.nola.com, as well as at Spencer the Guru and at Bet with Spence. We got a lot going on there with getting more into betting, with more fantasy sports, which that's still my forte. Do a lot of fantasy sports, prop betting analysis. Got a column coming out tomorrow morning on the top matchups to watch and top prop plays. So yeah, y'all go check it out, y'all. That's Spencer the Guru and Bet with Spence.
Yeah, people who are into sports betting probably started by being into fantasy sports. So I know there's some overlap there as well. He's Spencer Urquhart. I'm Shane Jackson. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'll be back tomorrow to preview the Bears game, Bears-Texans on Sunday, with Sean Hammond, our beat reporter, like we do every single Friday. So make sure you tune in to tomorrow's episode of the Bet Chicago Sports Podcast. Until then, see you next time.